In a better situation, I would love to have you all in a computer lab where I'd let you actually be able to do this. It's less fun to watch somebody else have fun on a computer, but this is the situation we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the things that I was talking about using some Portugal data, and try and show you what can be done. So what I have here, I think you can all read that okay. This is a spreadsheet of data about crime in Portugal. I actually downloaded it off of the INE site. In fact, here's what the original table looked like. So this is what you get when you put in the right choices on ENA. There's actually a little symbol for Excel. If you click on that, it will download and look just like this. Now what I did is I actually took parts of it here, copied, put it over on the other page to sort of clean it up and make it easier to work with. So that's basically what you have here. Anytime I get a new data set of something like this, I take a look at it to see what questions it can answer for me, and also what questions it can't answer. So just by looking at the variables that I have, I get some idea of the kinds of questions it can answer. So what I have here is the name of a particular place, the region it's in, the sub-region. To me that's, I don't know, it's like NUTS 2 and NUTS 3 or NUTS 1. I don't know all of the NUTS regions very well, but it's those. Here I have the population of each of those. Number of crimes against persons, crimes against patrimony, crimes against life and society, crimes against the state, and finally crimes set out in sundry legislation, whatever that means. Okay? Somebody tell me a question that this data can answer that might be journalistically interesting. That you as a reporter might want to know, if you had this data in front of you, what kind of question could you get this data to answer for you? Don't make me pick on you, Dora, because I know she knows already. So you've got crime data. What would be the most obvious thing that you might want to know?
How many people commit a crime in a certain region? Okay.
How many? Well, this sort of tells you how many. We know that there were 207 violent crimes against people in Arcos de Valdevez. Is that how I pronounce? Okay. So we know that. Which is the place that had the most crimes? There's a journalistically interesting question. People might want to know that. Which is the place that has the least amount of crime? Okay? So right there are a couple of questions that this could answer. Another question that this can't immediately answer is which place had the biggest total number of crimes? Notice we have all these individual kinds of crimes, but we don't have a total there. So that's something we can make the spreadsheet do for us pretty soon. There are other kinds of questions. What is the total number of crimes against persons in all of Portugal? That would be another question. So all those kinds of questions, this is data that this should be able to answer for you, and that I would see as being useful for a story. So first I take a look at the data. So I start looking up here. I'm going to start scrolling down. And I'm going down and down and down, farther and farther and farther. Okay, so I discover there's actually 278 different places, municipios, I guess all these are. They're municipios? Okay. That are listed here in all across Portugal. Let's go back up to the top. Okay, so my first question is, which place has the most crimes against persons? I want to answer that question. One way to do it would be to keep flipping down until I find which one has the biggest, but that's going to take a while to find it. The nice thing about Excel is you can change the order. Usually the most boring order that you can put data in is alphabetical order. Okay? It tells you nothing. It's only good for finding a particular record. So if you're trying to find your hometown, having it in alphabetical order, well, that's great. You can go all the way down until you find your hometown. But for journalism, alphabetical order is boring. It tells you nothing. What we want to do as journalists is put it in some more interesting order. And let's face it, journalism, we are always interested in the extremes. We want to know the worst and the best and the biggest and the smallest and so on. And that's how we do by sorting. So to sort in Excel actually has like 3 ways to do everything. But here is one way. You can actually put your cursor, you see the little thing bouncing around there is the cursor. Put your cursor in the cell that you want to sort by, and then you go find one of these buttons up here. You see this button up at the top? Shows up there. That's the A to Z button, which means sort in ascending order from smallest to biggest. But what I want, because we want to know the worst up at the top, I click right next to there and I say I want to go in descending order. Watch what happens. Okay, that fast it took 279 different ones and put them in order. Are we surprised to discover that Lisbon has more crimes than any place else? Why is Lisbon's has so many crimes? It's big. It's got so many people. What do you expect? Okay, yeah, it's not Lisbon's fault. They just got a lot of people there, so of course they're going to have crime. So, but we're actually going to look at that. We're going to see maybe Lisbon actually isn't as bad as it looks. Even though they got a lot, maybe they have fewer crimes than you would expect for one that size. But let's do something else first. One question we want to answer, and obviously we could sort in the other direction too. So I'll show you quickly how that works. So I'm going to go back in the other direction. And here is apparently the place you most want to live if you never want to get held up at knife point. Barrancos in Alentejo. Okay? No crimes against person and just 11 crimes against patrimony. Okay. So what we want is total number of crimes for each one of these places. So I'm going to put this back in the other order just for no apparent reason. And I'm going to create a new column. This is what is known as sort of transforming the data. I'm creating a new variable, and I'm going to call it total crimes. Okay. And let's make it pretty by making it yellow again, and I'll move it over, make that pretty. So anyway. Okay, so what I want to do is add up crimes against persons, patrimony, all these things. With Excel, to do any kind of formula, you start with an equal sign. So you just type equals, and one way to do it would be to type equals F2, okay, plus G2 plus H2, etc. That's one way to do it. It's okay when you have like 5 of them, okay? But sometimes you have lots more. In fact, in a minute we're going to add up the column all the way down where we have 279. We wouldn't want to do that. So I'll show you another way to do this. I'm going to use a function that in English is called sum, S-U-M, which means add up. In Portuguese, it's soma. Right, Eudora? Okay, I remember that from working last year. So in the US, it's sum. And then I do the first one, which is F2. And then I do a colon, the little double dot. And then I do J2. And put them together. Okay? Let's get this cursor out of the way. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger too. Hold on a second. Zoom. I'll make this just a little bigger so you can see it. Okay. Here you can see the formula that I wrote up here. See it up there? Okay. What it says is add up everything between F2 and J2. So instead of having to write out each of those, I just put that in there. And it gave me the answer. Now you're thinking, okay, now he only has to write that 278 more times, right? That would be obviously bad. Excel has ways to copy things quickly. Notice the cursor, which is moving around there. Among journalists, this particular cursor is known as the big fat white cross. Okay? But when you put the big fat white cross on the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, it becomes the little tiny black cross. Okay? Big fat white, little tiny black. See like that? When it becomes the little tiny black, then you can use it to start copying down. One way to do that is hold down the mouse button, start dragging down, and release. Notice what it is doing. Remember we had F2 to J2? On the next one down, it's F3 to J3, F4 to J4, and so on. So it not only copies the formula down, but it changes the formula for each one. But even dragging down is, kind of tedious. It takes a while. So you can also do this. I'm going to put the cursor right again on that corner and double click and watch. Okay? Now it has copied it all the way down. Okay? So now we have the total number of crimes for every one of these cities. And it took, what, a minute to do all that. Okay. Let's do this. Let's say we want to know the total number of crimes that happened all over Portugal. So I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to write over here, I'm going to write total, just so I can keep track. I have skipped a row, because when you sort, if you don't skip a row, if you put additional stuff at the bottom, it'll get pulled into the sort. But if you leave a blank row, I'll show you what will happen. So I want to add everything up. In fact, I'm going to add up the population as well. So I'm going to write a formula. Anybody followed me well enough to know what the formula would be to add up the population? Okay, equals, but what's the word? Equals sum, right? And what'd you say?
E2.
E2, colon, E what?
There's no
I heard it over here. What'd you say? 279, right, okay. Whoops, I need the 2, right. E2, E279. Okay. I close the parentheses, hit enter, and I get 10.1 million people, which is about right for Portugal. Okay. Again, I could write that formula under each of these other columns, but I can also do this. Big fat white cross, little tiny black cross. This time, drag it to the right, and it gives you those answers. So that's for all of Portugal there. Okay, so we know there were 90,000 crimes against people, for instance. So one of our other questions is, what is the city that actually has the worst crime rate? In other words, we have all these cities that are different sizes, but how can we compare them fairly? Is it fair to compare Lisbon to Barrancos? They're way too different sizes. But if we create a crime rate, in other words, we calculate the total number of crimes per some unit, per capita or per 100 people or per 1,000 people, we can calculate that. So I'm going to do crime rate per, let's call it 1,000 and see if that's a good figure to start with. To do a crime rate, we take the total number of crimes and divide by the total population. Okay? We'll start with that and see what happens. So equals